Hey folks, this is Kel'Thuzad. We've been asked quite a few times now what add-ons go into the various bits and pieces that make up my UI, or across various characters actually, so we're going to do that today. We're going to go through all the add-ons that I'm using currently for my UI and how they all fit together to create what you're looking at right here. It's actually pretty simple. There's only a handful of add-ons which really make up the entirety of the UI. You've got LVUI, which makes up the vast majority of things. It's the unit frames, it's the chat bars, it's the minimap, buffs, debuffs, all that stuff. Raid frames, most of the time. So I'll outline that hopefully in some form of box. You can tell how much actually comes from LVUI, and it's a pretty big deal. LVUI actually replaces a lot more than what you see here, so when you first use it, it's definitely a huge change, and it's pretty complicated to start with. And if you don't really want to replace everything and the entire look of WoW itself, LVUI might be a bit too big of a step. You can get quite a few of these bits and pieces on their own. I know the unit frames are shadowed unit frames, but that's only going to be one piece of the puzzle. Now, one way to get my UI without having to go through all the trouble of setting up yourself is to import a profile, and I'll provide profiles for everything that I can for all of the add-ons that actually support importing a profile in the comment section below, because that's just going to make it so much easier. And if you just literally want to copy my UI and take it for yourself, you can do that. It's pretty easy. Now, there are a few variations of LVUI you might have seen over the past few weeks or months, depending on how long you've been watching my videos, but Mage is the one that I've been using the most. Mage is the one that I put the most time into actually creating, and you can see it's pretty basic. It's got your player frame, and then on the other side it's got your target frame, and at the bottom you've also got your abilities. I like the way that's set up. I like the little block abilities. Typically, I find myself looking down at my abilities far more often than I should. I should be using those WeakAuras, but it's a nice little layout, and I think it works pretty well. It's nice and clean, chat on one side, and then a bar on the other side for details. We'll get into that later. And then I just have my raid frames up to the left there above the chat, because I'm not really going to be paying much attention to them as a DPS, but I do want them on the screen. And then we have the Shadow Priest, which uses pretty much the same thing as my Frost Mage. They're both DPS. I didn't really see any reason to swap it around too much. I think there are a minor difference here and there. Actually, for my Priest, I have the minimap down in the bottom right corner, and then I kind of squish my details in to make that fit. I actually like that a lot, but whenever I'm playing my Mage, for some reason, even though I'm getting used to it on my Priest, I always look to the top right for my minimap when I'm playing my Mage. I apparently can't get used to that on my Mage right now, so I'll hopefully, work my way towards that sometime soon. But I've been playing a lot of Priests, so my Mage is getting left behind a little bit in some areas. And then whenever I decide to heal, it kind of copies the same thing for my Shadow Priest. This is actually why my Shadow Priest has the minimap in the bottom right, because I stole this healing UI from my wife. Now, Nadara heals for our Mythic Raids, and she's an amazing healer, and she caught me healing without pretty much any add-ons, so I stole pretty much all of it. She has the minimap in the bottom right, so now I have the minimap in the bottom right. I'm getting used to it. It does feel a little better. I think I have a lot more room in the top half of the screen. It's a work in progress, but for this healing UI, everything's kind of shoved to the left and right, especially at the bottom. Things are a little smaller when it comes to player frame and target frame, especially on her UI. We'll get to that in a little bit. But then you have your raid frames smack bang in the middle at the bottom to help you heal just a little bit better. Now, that's a different add-on entirely. I actually don't use LVUI's raid frames while healing. I use Voodoo instead. Now, if we swap over to her UI, you can see that everything is smaller, especially the abilities to the left and right, and then her target and player frames are also a lot smaller too. If you prefer to have things smaller like her UI, I'll also link everything for hers as well. All of this can be found on Discord as well if the links in the comments don't work for whatever reason. While we're on the topic of healing UIs and those raid frames, that again is Voodoo. That's an add-on which you can get off Curse or pretty much anywhere you can get add-ons, and that just has a lot more customization when it comes to raid frames compared to something like LVUI, which is more of a entire package deal. So that's specifically for raid frames, and it's fantastic for healers because you can track all sorts of debuffs and buffs from you, and you can do it in a variety of ways. You can change the colors and everything. You can have them track specific debuffs in a little bar below. It's fantastic. Honestly, going from using the LVUI raid frames to using Voodoo was absolutely insane for me healing, and I've only been doing it for like 2 weeks. So I'll leave the profiles for that in the comment section below as well if you're interested. And then we have details, which, let's be honest, is probably the most important thing here. It tracks your damage done and tracks your healing done, I guess, and damage taken, all that, but it tracks your damage done, which is the most important thing. Let's be honest. So Details is really cool because it's really clean, it seems to be incredibly accurate. I use it over Recount or Scarred, and I have been for quite a while now just because it seems to do a better job and it seems to be more lightweight, even though it comes with a whole bunch of other bloat add-ons which you can happily turn off as soon as you install it. The great thing about this is also that you can have as many windows as you like, and I love to have damage up and healing up at the same time, especially, you know, if I'm swapping between the two. I fit those into my UI towards the bottom right. It's either, you know, my mage, one block and one block, or with my priest, it's now just two little strips right next to the minimap. They fit in pretty well, and I love that, you know, it just fits wherever you want to put it, and I probably wouldn't go back to anything else unless they stopped updating details. Now, WeakAuras is the other big thing that I use for my UIs. You can see that thing smack bang in the middle of my screen for every single UI you've seen so far. WeakAuras just lets you track pretty much anything however you want. You can track it in a bar, in a graphic, just as a little cooldown thing. It's really insane what WeakAuras can do these days. So for my Frost Mage, for example, I use it to track things like Glacial Spike and my Icicles, so it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, light up Glacial Spike to let me know that I can use it, and then, you know, I can just fire off my abilities. It also tracks things like Brain Freeze procs and Fingers of Frost procs, Icy Veins cooldown, Frozen Orb cooldown, Comet Storm, pretty much anything I could want. Having it in the middle of your screen just saves you from flitting down to wherever your abilities are every time you need to check something. It makes things a lot easier. My Shadow Priest does the exact same thing, it even tracks my insanity and lets me know how much I can expect, and gives me a little marker for when I know that I can go into Void Form. It also tracks things like Void Form stacks. I mean, if you've played with WeakAuras, you know what they can do, right? They just track your cooldowns, but they can also track anything going on in an encounter and debuffs and buffs. They make life a lot easier no matter what you're doing. There is a huge WeakAura for dungeons, which lets you know pretty much every harmful or beneficial effect going on, and then every raid tier we get a new set of WeakAuras for that as well. The only other add-ons that I really use which don't really make up the UI, like if you get just those add-ons that I've talked about and import the profiles for the ones that you can, and I think Details is actually the only one you can't import a profile unless someone has figured out a way to do that, because I've been trying and I can't find it, which is frustrating, but they're really easy to just kind of scale and drag where you want anyway. But if you get the profiles for what I supply and you get LVUI and you get WeakAuras, you can just kind of have my UI as it is right now. You don't really need anything else. But some other add-ons that I love to use are ERT, that's Exhaustus Raid Tools. That's great for setting up things in Raid. You can have a note which shows on screen, and you can do things like healing cooldowns and rotations for mind controls on Zekphos, for example. That's very handy. But then it also has a whole bunch of stuff to track Raid cooldowns, including battle reses, and if you're a healer, you can track every healer's cooldowns to know when they're using them, when they're going to come up, and just kind of plan things around that really easily. You can see it over on the left on my healing UI, you can see the kind of things that it can track. You can choose what to track. If you don't want to track certain things, you can just tick it off in the options menu. It's incredibly customizable, so you can suit it to your needs. And the other add-on that I love to use, which you'll probably only ever see in raids, is BigWigs. Where would we be without a timer add-on, let's be honest. So that's over on the left for me. You can place this wherever you want, but it is very important and incredibly useful to have some form of timer add-on, so you can see when abilities are coming and you can align your own abilities up to make the best use out of what you've got. That's probably the best thing you can do to improve your performance in any role in a raid or dungeon. Get a timer add-on and actually pay attention to it, because if you know something's going to happen in 5 seconds that's going to make you move around for the next 10 seconds and you pop something like Arcane Power, you're just going to lose a huge amount of DPS. But knowing that that's going to happen, waiting, doing the mechanics, and then popping your cooldowns after that, you're going to do so much more damage than you would have otherwise. So definitely an important one to get, but not necessarily something that goes into my UI. So grab yourself LVUI. Pretty easy to get and install. Grab yourself WeakAuras and Details, and that's pretty much my UI. I would recommend you get something like ERT if you want to take raiding seriously, and then a timer add-on is always a must-have if you're pretty much doing any PvE. As I said earlier, I'm going to provide links to all of my profiles in the comment section below. It's going to be to Pastebin, so what you need to do is copy that profile string that you get. It's going to be very long. Copy that and then go into LVUI, go into Profiles, Import, paste that in, and you'll immediately get my LVUI. Do the same thing for WeakAuras. I'll give you links to the WeakAuras that I use. Copy the string, paste it in, import it, you're done. Details doesn't let me do that with profiles, I think. I'll have another look, try to export it. If I can, I will. If I can't, you just need to go into Details, create a new window, and then drag them into place. It's really easy. But that's pretty much everything that makes up my UI, so that's it for this video. Is there anything else that I glossed over? Is there anything you're more interested in my UI, or maybe something else entirely? Leave all your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving week and a great Thanksgiving. If you're not in the US, I hope you had an amazing week nevertheless. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. You can see their names floating by on screen. If you want to join these lovely guys and gals, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave. If you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.